Hi, welcome to the IT Service Management Mentor. I'm going to be talking about what does an IT Service Delivery Manager do. So, some experience as to where I'm coming from. I've been doing the role for a good 25 years. I'm going to discuss some of the common themes in the role that I've come across. It's based on lots of different industries, lots of different salary ranges, different day rates that I've been on. Also, various levels and areas of responsibility. Some areas include staff responsibilities in some organisations, others don't include those staff responsibilities. And also some of the roles I've noticed it's the same role, but they have different job titles, but it's a service delivery manager in essence. So this is based on me, being in the service delivery manager positions in different organisations for 25 plus years. I'm looking through job descriptions. It's based on first-hand experience, and I'm going to share them now. So before we get into some of the trends and common points, some 101 stuff. Sometimes the IT Service Delivery Manager is abbreviated to SDM, not to be confused with a Service Desk Manager. Also, there's overlap with different types of roles in different organisations. So over the years, I've been a service manager, I've been a service delivery associate, I've been a business relationship manager. They all kind of boil down into the same service delivery manager type role. In essence, the role itself is about managing the delivery of services. You're usually owning a service, maybe it's an individual service, or maybe it's all of service, all of the systems. And most of the time, it's focusing on the production environment. There are cases where I've had responsibility for lower environments in terms of test, UAT, for example, but typically it's the production environment, and you're making sure that elements of availability, service provider obligations, all of that good stuff, that it's met, and that the service that's being delivered to the business is what the business needs. And you're that interface between the business and the IT function. Okay, so let's get on to some of the main points and trends I've noticed. This is me based on 25 years of being a service delivery manager. What are the common themes that I've seen in all of those roles? First item is around ITIL best practice. So a lot of emphasis around the various processes, the various practices. There are more, there's certainly more emphasis on practices such as incident or change or problem or service request management in particular, but generally ITIL best practice overall. And if we talk in ITIL for terminology in terms of practices, we're talking everything in general management practice, service management practice, and technical management practice. Those 34 practices, that is a definite emphasis. Stakeholder management, so relationship management, and a 360 view of that. That's a very common theme in service delivery manager type roles. You're managing relationships with different people within the organization, or sometimes outside of the organizations, third parties, etc. Escalations and being that interface. Again, I mentioned earlier that interface between the business operations and the IT function, and maybe that's an internal IT function or it's an outsourced function. But either way, there's a go-to element in terms of if there's a major issue that's impacting the business and the business can't operate, and it's causing operational issues from a business perspective, you would expect a service delivery manager to be there right in the middle of it, orchestrating, coordinating, making sure that that the right people are in the right places doing the right things. Vendor management, very large part of the IT service delivery management role, whether those are onshore vendors or whether those are offshore vendors, perhaps in the US or perhaps in India, wherever they may be in Europe. Wherever those vendors are, there's a strong element of vendor management, and that involves everything from managing the day-to-day monthly service reviews, making sure that the vendor is delivering on those obligations that the contract that's in place to provide those services. Continual improvement and quality, so really looking at the CI behind that in terms of what can be done to make things better. How can we improve that quality? How can we improve that process or that practice or that knowledge level, whatever it may be? Over the years, team management has been varied. It's ranged from large teams in different countries, different locations, different regions, and large extended teams, to just being an individual as an individual service delivery manager for an entire business. One thing that's always been in common has been that it's end to end. So it's right from the point of recruiting people, going through CVs, selecting people, interviewing people, going through the interview process, and then the day-to-day management. So perhaps there may be a daily stand-up call, or perhaps there are team meetings, or perhaps there's quarterly reviews, objectives, job descriptions, making sure that people are clear in terms of what their objectives and their expectations are, right through to the other end in terms of performance management. Perhaps people aren't pulling their weight and they're not delivering on what they should be delivering, and perhaps there's an element of making sure that there is ways of putting new people into the roles, or extending their roles, or having to go through some kind of dismissal activity. Then there's service desk function. So in all of the service delivery manager roles I can think of, there's been a strong element of making sure that the service desk is performing as it should do. And that leads quite nicely into the ITSM tooling. So mainly it's been ServiceNow. I'll be honest, over the various years, it's broadly been ServiceNow's been the predominant tooling. There's been lots of other tools as well, but mainly it's been from a service management perspective. ITSM, it's been ServiceNow. Contract management, making sure those vendors are delivering, and there's been various activities there around making sure vendors are delivering on their contractual requirements. New service introduction, so making sure that any new projects, and that links nicely into the other one around mini projects, making sure any projects that are being delivered into new service, that there is appropriate documentation, perhaps production acceptance documentation for the wider team to be able to support. Maybe if it's a SIAM type model, making sure that ecosystem is operating. Budget has been something that's been on and off. It's been a mixture in terms of budget responsibility or no budget responsibility in terms of CapEx and OpEx. Certainly SLAs and KPIs and reporting and trending is a real key element that you see in a lot of job descriptions, and real world of absolutely making sure that those are being met. Documentations, making sure that there is documentation, making sure policies and procedures are there. CSAT, that there's a process there of getting that feedback. There's been a mixture of responsibility and accountability in terms of responsible for a region, or accountable for a region, or responsible for a service, or accountable for a service. But there's been a real mix of responsibility and accountability. Some SDM roles I've been involved in have involved the request for information, request for quotes, and request for proposal activities. Quite a lot of governance and oversight and risk register activity. Audit involvement, whether that's security or financial regulatory activity or credit card activity. MIM management has ranged from being overall accountable for the MIM process, and perhaps there's a MIM stand-up team, right through to the other extreme of actually being the one of the teams on the major incident management activity and being on those bridges. CAB, certainly a service delivery manager for their service is expected to attend CAB. I would say on the whole, I've been a CAB chair more than I've not been a CAB chair. So definitely being able to understand the change advisory board it is a real important element of that role. And then the single point of contact. So again, that kind of links into the escalation point. Quite often you're needed to be a single point of contact to be able to fix things. You may not necessarily technically know how to fix them, but you will know a team, you will know a vendor, you will know a process that will allow for whatever that business operational issue is to be able to be fixed. Ownership of a service, we've talked about. Service management overall, in terms of making sure that all of those service management best practices are being delivered, and that sits within the service delivery manager role. The availability point, typically it's been 24/7, and that's for operations and for applications and everything that's involved in that. Resilience is an example there. And it's the management of service delivery to a customer. Those are the common themes that I've seen over the last 25 years in service delivery management. If we just delve really briefly into a couple of other slides here, we've got the ITIL best practice. This is about the processes and the practices. So in ITIL 4 speak, we're talking general management, we're talking service management, we're talking technical management. Very often you'll see version 3 or version 4 foundation exam as a minimum level of knowledge. In terms of those practices, a lot of emphasis around problem, incident, major incident management, request, change management, catalogue, continual improvement, knowledge, supplier management, availability, relationship management, service desk, service level management, and the infrastructure and platform management. Those are the practices I've definitely seen a strong emphasis on. So continual improvement register, for example, everything that's involved in the CI model around what's the vision, where are we now, where do we want to be, how do we get there, how do we take action, and then measuring and evaluate those metrics. Did we get there? And then as it goes round, how do we keep the momentum going? And then you go back to the beginning. What's the vision? Have we got those business visions, those missions, those goals, those objectives? Have we done baseline assessments? Have we got measurable targets? Have we got an improvement plan? Have we executed the improvement plan and those activities? And are we evaluating metrics and KPIs? And as it goes round. So the CI register and the model is a key point in there, as is SLA and KPI management. So we're looking at the P1s, the P2s, the first time fix, time to answer, perhaps abandonment rate. Certainly things around how often are the service providers meeting those metrics. What percentage is it? Is it 85%? Is it 90%? Is it 75%? Whatever those percentages are. And likewise for your P1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, what is the percentage? How often are they achieving those? I've talked about CAB chairs as well, in terms of certainly the change management practice. It's a strong element in terms of your service that you're responsible for, and service desk monitoring and measuring that level of performance. Stakeholder relationship management, that covers customers, sponsors, users, mixture of external customers and internal ops, or internal stakeholders and external suppliers. Just managing that relationships, making sure that they're constructive, making sure that they're open. Really important, building that level of trust. Sharing good news, but also having to share those difficult conversations and the bad news. Perhaps the service isn't available, and rather than trying to blag it, you're being honest, you're being upfront, you're saying, look, this is where we're up to, this is what's going on. Helps build trust. Understanding business drivers and understanding your stakeholders' drivers, and also you're going to have conflicting stakeholder demands. You need to manage those. and then reporting and presenting data and information. Maybe that's by way of a monthly service review of some kind, or just publishing service level agreement metrics. Then SIAM and vendor management. So maybe you're moving to that environment, or it's an existing environment. Either way, you're managing that ecosystem, you're involved in that. Clearly depends on what the support model is and retained capabilities there from a customer perspective. So if you're a service provider, if you're a service integrator, your areas of responsibility and reach are going to be different. But certainly making sure the ecosystem is collaborative, that everybody's thinking end to end, making sure your boards are working well, change advisory boards, for example, or architecture boards. And from a vendor perspective, you may need to be bringing new vendors into the mix. You may be having to retire vendors. Certainly making sure you've got quality outcomes for your IT operations. Monthly service reviews. Now, if you're a service provider, perhaps you're presenting that to the customer or a service integrator, or if you're working internally as a service delivery manager, you might be presenting to different business functions within your organization. And certainly the ITIL, the ITSM activities that vendor or service provider are responsible for, making sure that they are fit for purpose and fit for use. That's it. Please do subscribe, and I will continue to post information. Thank you.